I'm ready to start building one of my animations, and the first thing that I want to do is to build a little set or a scene. Now, whenever I'm drawing an animation, I like to separate out all the moving objects from the non-moving objects just to make the animation workflow a little bit easier. In addition, it also allows me to work from the back of the scene going to the foreground. We're going to draw the backgrounds first, and then we'll draw the foregrounds, and in doing so, we'll create a nice system of animation. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm just working with a brand new default Blender scene, nothing too fancy here. And I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. There we go. So I can see the boundaries of my canvas. And what I'm looking to do here is to create a simple little scene environment where I have maybe a ground down below and then a sky with maybe some clouds or something up top. Just real simple. And this is going to allow us to use some gradients and some material presets a little bit more intelligently inside of our entire system. Now, when we're setting the foundation for any animation, it's good to do some housekeeping pretty early on. So there's two things that I like to create almost initially right off the bat whenever I start a project. First and foremost, I want to go into my material library and start removing some of these objects that I know I'm just not going to need. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the square stroke. Don't need that material. Hit the minus sign. Dots stroke. Don't need that one. Going to hit the minus sign as well. And we'll keep solid fill and then solid stroke, because those are two good foundation level materials that will help me just very quickly block out some overall shapes. Now, since I'm here working inside of my material library, let's go ahead and add some of the materials that I'm conceptualizing that I think I'm going to need. As I mentioned before, in the little set, the scene that I'm going to create, I want to have a sky, some clouds, and maybe some grass on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is start laying the foundations for that by creating 3 new materials by hitting the plus sign. So the plus sign creates a slot. Let's actually create the material now. This one we're going to name, we'll name it sky. And we're not going to use the stroke on this material, but we are naturally going to use a fill color. And I want to make it a nice blue. There we go. Wonderful. Let's add another material for the clouds. In the clouds, we are going to keep the stroke. We're going to change the color, and then the fill, as one might imagine, is going to be white. There it is. And then lastly, let's create a third material for the ground. The ground, I think, eventually is going to be a gradient. We don't want the stroke. We want it to be the fill, and we're just going to leave it. We'll leave it as solid just for the time being. Once everything is drawn and applied, then we'll go in and we'll start customizing this to make it look how we want. There we go. A nice, just kind of middle green here. All right, let's start drawing. And now, to help in the drawing process, I'm going to use some animation layers on this grease pencil object. So it's this green icon down here. If we click on it, you can see that we have two animation layers that are already active inside of the scene itself. Let's get rid of both of them. And we're going to create a new layer. And as one might imagine, let's double click on the name. This is going to be the background. There we go. Now I know that whenever I draw is going to be placed on this animation layer, and it begins to separate it out from the rest of the set, because I'm going to have some other parts and pieces that I'm going to start layering on here in a minute. This is going to be the sky, the clouds, and the ground all in one layer, and then later we'll put the ball and some guidelines in there to help us animate in here in a minute. So we're going to have multiple animation layers inside of our scene. Let's start drawing. Okay, so I'm in the draw mode here, and I'm just going to use the simple shapes. The first thing I'm going to do is figure out the sky, and I noticed immediately that I'm in the ground material. Let's just start with the sky material already selected. This helps out. And I'm going to have the sky up here. I'm trying to figure out where I want my horizon line. Yeah, right about there. That's a good spot for the horizon line. When the horizon line is kind of at the top 2/3, if you will, it draws focus to the ground. When the horizon line for your illustrations are down at the bottom third, it draws focus to the sky. Now, I want the focus of this animation to be on the ball. That's going to happen in the foreground. So having that horizon line kind of at the top 1/3 is going to be a good place to begin. All right, so there's the first shape. That's the sky. Let's hit the return key, make sure that's been selected. I'm going to go into the ground material now, and as one might imagine, I'm going to draw the ground and hit the return key to confirm it. Voila, looking pretty good. Now, I think I also want to have another straight line right at the horizon line just to kind of break it up a little bit, to give me the ability to have an object that has a different value attached to it, a different color value attached to it, to give me some separation between the horizon and the ground itself, which also gives us a really great opportunity to talk about how we can arrange things inside of my scene. I'm looking at the size of that line, and it's way too small. Let's hit the escape key, increase the radius a little bit here. How big is that? Yeah, that's good, right about there. I'm going to hold down the shift key while I draw it to make sure it's nice and straight. I'm happy, hit the return key, and life is good. Now, if we were to zoom in and take a look at all of this, okay, we have some issues here with the objects inside of our scene itself. Now, I just took a second and I drew this straight line here. Okay, I can move it around if I'd like. Okay, because there's some things that are wrong with that object, with this line that I need to change. First and foremost, it's behind the square that represents the sky, and it's also behind the ground itself. I want to change that. So let's go ahead and change that real fast. Let's select the stroke. I'm just using the grab tool here just to kind of position it where I want. Whenever I'm working inside of Blender, I try to make sure that the shapes that I'm using for the background extend past the boundaries of my frame just ever so slightly. That way I can very quickly go in and select them after the fact. When we render, obviously, it's only going to render what's inside the boundaries of our frame, so we can get a little sloppy and have our scenes extend outward if we'd like. All right, let me grab that shape real fast. And now I'm going to right-click on it. Right-click on the frame. And one of the things that we have in here is Arrange. And we can bring this object to the front or push it to the back. And that's going to help the order in which this shape appears inside of our scene. Now looks like there's some transparency associated with this line. So let's give it its own material. I think that's really kind of what's going on here. It's using this solid stroke material preset. Let's give it its own material. And I'm just going to call this material Horizon. And we'll just make it a nice dark color for the moment, and we'll assign it to that object. Now, I also think that when I drew this, yeah, the strength was down at almost 0%. So I'm actually going to redraw this object. That's why it's semi-transparent. Let's just hit the X key, get rid of all the points. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. I'm going to zoom out. Let's just redraw it. Look like it goes real fast into drawing things. And I got the horizon line already selected. I'm going to turn off my pressure sensitivity, put my strength to, there we go. That's what I'm after. I like it. If we return to edit mode, I can select it, grab the wrong one. Now, if you ever make a mistake like I did, of course you can hit undo, or just right click and it puts it back. The right-click function is kind of like a cancel, if you will. So let me do that again just so everyone can see it. You can grab your shape. If you go, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that, just right-click. It'll cancel the operation and put the object back where it was. And this time, I'm going to very carefully grab my stroke, there it is, and put it where I want. So if we zoom in, we can take a look. We can take a look at this ordering function that we saw before, because it is kind of a very powerful addition to our tools. We can very quickly send it to the back, okay? Or maybe grab, I'm not in my box select mode, which is why it's not selecting. Go. What's going on? It's not selecting it. There we go. Yeah. And with that selected, we can send these to the front and to the back pretty quickly. So if you're struggling with a order operation where it's not looking the way you want, just know that you can arrange it in edit mode. Also, I do a spot check from time to time in object mode just to get rid of all the stroke outlines and kind of see how things are working. If you're really curious on how your illustration is going to look in the final render, don't be afraid to go up and just render the image real fast. This is kind of the cool thing about working inside of Blender, is that all of this functionality is just right at our fingertips, and we can see exactly what the computer is going to produce for us. Now, I think that this black line is a little too intense. So luckily, we're just going to go into the horizon material itself. Let's just change the color. We don't need to reapply anything. There's no work that we have to do. We just need to go in, change the properties, and any object that that's been associated with that material is going to update immediately. I'll make a really extreme example so you can see what's going on. Yeah, there it is, pink. Any object that's been tagged with that material is also adopting that change. Now, I don't want it to be pink. I think I'm going to have it just be a very, very dark green, perhaps. Yeah, that works for me. Just something in there to kind of break up the values. Something like that. I'm a happy camper. So we just made very quickly a simple little set with a couple little squares, a line, some materials. I wanted to extend the materials real fast with a gradient on the ground. I wanted to go from a dark green to a light green. So let's change it to gradient real fast. And we want a linear gradient. I want to keep the properties as they are just to make it a little bit easier for me to see what's going on. I've put the blend to 0. And now let's just very small changes here. Yeah, there we go. On the location on X, let's start rotating it. I'm going to move it down while I rotate so I can always see kind of like the center of the gradient transition inside of my square. And I do this just for me so I don't lose an understanding of where the gradient exists. And then when I'm happy, I'll just put it at 90. There we go. I'll increase the scale to increase the transition between the colors, and then just kind of play around with its placement along the y-axis. How do I want this to transition? Now, the secondary color, let's find a nice green. I want to have it go from a dark green to just a slightly lighter green. These small little changes in value, it's amazing how much they add. Yeah, I'm kind of digging that right there. That's looking pretty cool. One thing that you can also do is flip the colors. I think I like that. That's pretty cool. Let's render the image, see what we get. I may do the exact same thing for the sky later on, but at the very least, this is starting to feel and look a little bit more in the direction that I want to go. I might add a radial gradient in the sky just to give it a little bit of life, give it a little bit of love in there. Let's do it real quick. Excuse me. We'll change my fill properties to gradient, and I'll be honest with you, this is already starting to look pretty great. I liked how it was working. Yeah, I may start to play around with this a little bit more. Yeah, we'll do this. We'll put it over at the blend value at 0. I'm going to change its location along the X. Of course, naturally, we don't want it to be a linear gradient. Let's make the colors really extreme. I like making the colors extreme just so I can see exactly what's going on. Oftentimes, that's the problem for my simple little eyeballs, is that I can't really understand what the computer's doing. So by making in the really noticeable colors, I'm able to consume and understand precisely how these changes are affecting the illustration. Now, with that done, let's rotate this a little bit. Actually, let's change it to a radial gradient. Yeah, and we're going to, let's see. Let's change it back to linear. I think what I'm concerned with at the moment is that I don't understand where everything is located inside the scene. So I'm going to kind of do what I did with the ground. I'm going to rotate it, move it down. Let's change the scale so the transition's quick. There we go. Now I can see it a little bit more clearly. And what this is ultimately allowing me to do is to figure out kind of generally where the center point of the gradient is. Because now I have a really good, the center of that transition line between the colors is the center of the gradient. And I think this is really going to help me with my radial gradient. At the very least, it'll get me in the ballpark. Yeah, now I can see it. A little blue in there. Scale it that way, scale it this way, make it a little bit more, something like that. I'll move it down a little bit on the Y, just so it looks like maybe, eventually, hopefully, maybe it'll look like the sun's coming up. Now, I'm not in love with the colors. Blue to yellow is not exactly the color properties that I'm looking for here. But let's just change the colors now. Let's change the interior one to a slightly different blue. And the secondary color is going to be a much darker blue. I don't want to have this extreme change in color value for my little sky here, but the colors are going to change as they go to the boundaries of our frame. And I'm pretty happy with the way that this is looking. Let's render it real fast. Be real confident that this is how we want our little set and our scene to go. I may draw some clouds in here, but this is already getting pretty fantastic, and I'm happy with the overall result that I'm using, that I've created for the background of my scene.